Hi, everybody. Welcome to Precog Time officially. This is our 20th episode, which is kind of mind-blowing since the beginning of quarantine. And we are really, really happy and lucky to have our friend Candystore here with us today, who's accomplished in so many mediums, but I guess we'll be discussing all of them within the framework of poetry tonight. And you just had a book come out called High Angels. This is the deluxe version, which is really amazing. I got my own copy in the mail the other day and
Oh,
was
yay, it
thrilled.
came. The
It
postal
came.
service works.
The Postal Service works. And Candystore is also a fantastic arts host who puts on and organizes a sort of variety show called Strangers with Candystore, which there will be another virtual one happening and is also pretty much the last social event I went to before before lockdown began. It turns out.
It wasn't a super spreader event, though, but it was close.
It was close. So we just wanted to open up by asking how you're doing. Maybe if you also want to talk a little bit about about Strangers with Candystore, and maybe we can talk about that later. But really, just how your quarantine has been and what you've been getting into the past 6 months.
I know. Well, my parents are in the audience, but I'm going to say this anyway. You can plug your ears if you want to. A lot of new sex toys is my quarantine. Because shit is boring and scary outside. So I haven't left. But I was out of Brooklyn for a long time, which was good. I think it was the safe thing to do, but it ultimately felt wrong in the end. And I felt like I was avoiding inevitable plague that we are now living in. And I'm trying to thrive. I'm doing yoga, eating raw vegan, drinking a lot.
Getting through the ways.
Balance the skills.
Have you been working through quarantine as well?
I have been employed, aside from 1 month of furlough, which was really fun, actually. July, like who wants to work in July?
No.
But yeah, I have been fortunate enough to keep my job. That is something I can do from home. So that is also a big plus.
Yeah. And have you, I mean, making work also? Have you been making?
Yeah, wow. Less lately now that work is like starting to pick back up. But those first few months, I was just writing every day. And I don't think I've ever done that except maybe in grad school. But I got a lot of writing time, carved out a lot of writing time, which was awesome. But I think also I was like processing a lot of trying to become so hopeless.
Yeah. And did that like affect how you were writing and what you were writing about, or?
I mean, I think as you'll find out, audience, also thanks for coming, everyone. I didn't even say that. I have some pretty like specific projects that are kind of ongoing. So finishing the book, like getting the book designed and printed, was a project that I was able to complete in quarantine. But then just sort of doing my normal like Cray Cray Ooh La La series and collaboration with my then roommate, the painter Nicole Wittenberg. We were quarantining together. So, things kind of like emerged that were surprising or one-offs, but mainly I was sort of like staying the course. And I think that was actually really helpful to kind of like, I was like, I have a job. I have to like write these kinds of things or something like that. It helped me ground and focus.
So High Angels, which is the book that you're working on publishing, and which has came out as a limited first edition at last
Great.
year's book fair, um, and which has now been expanded into a deluxe edition.
Another limited deluxe edition. Yeah.
Another limited deluxe edition is I mean, I have any number of things that I could say about the book, which I love, but I was wondering if you could introduce it a little bit, and maybe also talk a little about it's in some ways a collaboration with the paintings and artwork of Jerome,
Yeah.
yeah, as well.
Um, so I started writing these poems on my phone, um, just kind of on the subway, specifically like waiting for the subway ride to be over, and back when we were riding the subway every day.
Oh yeah.
And I started that in about 2017, and it kind of became this like fun game where when I got on the subway, I kind of like knew what my job was. Again, like I sort of had this like task for myself, and some days it was really fun. I would like sit down and be like, oh yes, this is the best poem, and some days it was like, oh my god, I hate this, but I would do it anyway, just as kind of a practice. And the idea for the angel, so each poem is dedicated to kind of this fictitious angel character that I make up, that is sort of loosely based on this idea from the I Ching of these invisible helpers that essentially do everything for us because we have no autonomy.
Mm.
Only our ego that sort of tricks us into thinking that we're making choices or that we're kind of controlling our fates. And I got really into that idea. Like when you're running 35 minutes late and you're like, the L and it's like packed and like people are like barfing in the corner or like whatever, like, and you're just like, I'm not in control. Like there's some invisible force that's in control. I'm not in control. Like that is a very restorative and helpful place to put your mind. It's not always accessible, I think, for me, but
Mm.
I could find some like solace in that. So that's sort of where the idea came for the poems.
And they're also poems which have gone through a number of iterations. I'm just gonna pull up because I read a couple of them as Word documents, but we also worked to make them sort of small altars for the fourth issue of the magazine.
Yeah.
Um, so I was just gonna pull those up so people could see what that looked like. Um, but the altarpiece and the aesthetics around the poems has also always been seemed to be really important in thinking about your work, like how these were going to be poems that are about these little helpers, or in some way kind of devotional poems, right? Poems that are written to a kind of that are written in the format or written within the address of a beloved, um, and then to kind of generate a sort of perhaps random but still evocative and particular set of objects that might reflect the altar that you might make toward
Yeah.
um, this spirit in one way or another. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how you're thinking about aesthetics in the poetry, and as you're thinking about the relationship between images and sort of textual and plastic images or imagery, and then we can maybe get into your reading.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think so. These altars sort of predate the book too, which I was working on these poems and was fortunate enough to have a venue in Precog magazine. But like Gabby's saying, I didn't want them to just be in print. I wanted there to be a visual aspect. And I do have an altar making practice, if that's like a thing, just for myself, which I construct around the moon cycle, which sounds like a little embarrassing saying out loud, but it is like this clock that is in our lives, like whether we want it to be or not. And we were sort of joking before this started about like, you know, a stressful day is like shitty, but if you just turn off your phone, it goes away. You can't do that with the moon. And so there's like something that I've embraced about like, all right, it's a new moon, like we're starting like a clean slate. And that's usually when I build an altar, and I kind of set some intentions and like bring some objects in that evoke something that I want to focus on, or that sort of pay homage to something that I'm needing more of or interested in or want to, you know, give respects to, or whatever, you know, stuff that you put on an altar. So that's kind of where the idea for these like altar tableaus came from. And I literally just like filled a bag of junk in my house that I was like, oh, this is cool. Oh, I like this. Like this looks fun, cool, like a diamond. And like dumped it out on the floor. And Gabby, with all grace, was like, okay, like let's do this. Like let's take some photos. So yeah, and I think for me there is like some kind of like little nods and little like inside jokes in each of these, like the one that we're looking at now, Angel of Acute Suffering in Densely Urban Areas. You know, you can see my little eye in the reflection of a mirror. This painting, that sort of painting, it's made of cigarettes, but these cigarettes on a canvas that my friend Matt Smoke made, who's a painter, you know, is kind of like snuck in there as like a backdrop, but also kind of like, you know, honoring this artist who I love and adore. You know, spilled dirt kind of feels like being on the subway sometimes, that you just like tumbled out of some pot of dirt. I don't know. So yeah, there is kind of like a, I guess, sort of a language of symbols and things.
Um, and is that still something that you're thinking about with um, the book version of High Angels and
Well,
thinking about the
yeah,
symbolic?
I think not really. I think because once I found this artist, Jerome Keja, I started to see the kind of world that I felt like I was writing about in her artwork.
Mm,
And so I kind of like didn't need the altar anymore. Like I had this iconography and this other language that like completely matched with what I felt I was trying to evoke.
mm,
Um, so yeah, so I think there was kind of like a I don't know, something of the cosmic realm bringing me to this artist at the time that I found their work, and then having even the opportunity to work with their estate, and you know, it all just kind of like clicked into place.
mm.
I was in the flow, as you know, the witchy folks like to say. Um, so yeah, I think the visuals for the poems have kind of given way to Jerome's work.
Amazing. What
So
was?
with, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Kelly.
Oh no, with collaboration, do you normally have like the written part that you work on and then you find an artist to collaborate? Is that the sort of process, or has it come together that visuals were made based off of your writings?
That's a good question. I don't really know. I don't know the answer to that, because Jerome died in '95, so we have never met in this lifetime. But I think with other people that I've been collaborating with, it just sort of kind of like similarly, like it clicks into place. Like Jake Brush is a good friend of mine who's a filmmaker, and I knew I wanted to work with him in some capacity, and I kind of like gaslit him a little bit because I was like, let's make a video. I have this poem I want to make a video about, but I hadn't written the poem yet.
Mm.
And so we made the video, like with, and I was like, oh, the poem is about this, and like these things happen, but like still the poem had not been written. And we shot the video, and like as he was editing the video, I started actually like putting the poem down. And so it was this kind of weird, like who's gonna finish first kind of thing. And I think I ended up finishing the poem before he finished editing our video. But so that was kind of like a like a weird like trick that I did. I don't know. But I think it worked. It worked out to great effect.
That's really funny. So I think maybe we should read some poems.
Let's do it.
Great. So I'm pulling them up. But the first one is Angel of Quarantine.
Yeah.
Befittingly.
Befittingly. Yeah, this was probably the most recent one that I wrote.
Okay.
Which you can only get in a deluxe edition. Cool. Angel of Quarantine. Hi, all you angels. At least I'm stuck in a window with some water that waves at me across a bay. There's a lighthouse outside, checking up to see I'm okay at night. I miss the rottenness of acute suffering in densely urban areas. I told the ocean that. It splashed in one way, and the next day was unbroken glass. I'm still a face in a window looking at water instead of people breaking slowly.
Angel of Finding Somewhere Else to Look.
I have to find it in my book, sorry.
That's cool.
Yeah, I hope everyone is like getting all up close to their screen on these. Yeah, these paintings they're so small, you know, none of them, I think the biggest one that I put in the book is like 10 inches and my book is 10 inches. So I had to like scale it down slightly, but pretty much they're sort of true size in the book. And they're just like wildly detailed for like these little scraps of paper and garbage. Angel of Finding Somewhere Else to Look. Hi, Angel. You see how my beady eyes bore a fake window straight through khaki when a hot lap meets la face. It's so close. I feel it energetically singeing my lips. Owie paper cut of happiness. Today is a gift, which is why we call it the present. Or else today is just the pucker of the fly, or the bulgy wad of a pocket lining, dang. Maybe today has a thick bottle of pills in it, or a 13-inch saucisson rubbed and dry aged so long, something or other rattles the air. I can only stare. It's pulling my heart down. It's pulling my heart down. Today is.
Angel of the Song.
Oh, this is my fave. And this little, this like is like a little pillbox that is like maybe 2 inches wide, you know, and it's, I don't know, I just think it's so cute. This little Venus. Angel of the Song. Hi, Angel. What could they be listening to make their face do that? I hope I'd feel it like that, little fingers closing my lids like a box of ash and gripping handfuls of my eyebrows so they hang inwards in the way of so many things, recalling things long gone / people stepping out of the ash, a lifetime of things like getting that fat right where I need it, like grief heavy desert island feelings, like leaving my body like sunlight and this fast can clutching the hem of your ruby bell bottom. That poem is really about like watching people on the train with headphones in and just being really curious like what they're listening to make their face like make all these weird contortions. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. Angel of 1,000 Years of Tears.
This, so out of all the angel poems, like this, I feel like is like my pop song because it's the one that people reference the most for whatever reason, or like find the most memorable.
Oh, really?
But weirdly, this image, I don't know why I paired it. I just love this angel like peeing on this man in a bathtub. I guess whatever. I'll just read it and you can find the connection. Angel of 1,000 years of tears. Hi, Angel. I'm sorry I did it again. I bought a glittery, beaded see-through dress from China. They sell this shit at a store on Broadway for only $20. The store is called Necessary. I'm not crying. Someone else is.
Angel of bluish things.
Mm. This actually opens the book. And I was so lucky. So the deluxe edition of the book got more artwork. That's why it's deluxe. And I was so lucky to get to put this piece in because it's so fucked up and so different from, I think it's painted on like denim, like it looks like a denim pocket or maybe canvas or something like that. But so this is kind of like the entry point into the book. Angel of bluish things. Hi, Angel. In the city, it's a dusty blue kind of day, pewter, river light flown, some pinky gray. But you know this already, the little hand on my cupola, walking in your wing. I'm caught in an in-between, looking for money and writing you another prayer.
So do you want to read a couple of other poems? It's up to you.
Yeah, how's our time?
We're at 7:30. So we have a little bit of time.
I'll read a couple of the Cray Cray Ooh La La poems.
Okay.
So I worked for Crayola for like, I don't know, like maybe 8 months or 7 months. It was very short-lived. I was freelance, and it was kind of in my first couple years of moving to New York and really just trying to like find my place and like that poem just said, like looking for fucking money or writing another prayer. Like I was just like, gotta find some work to like make this happen. And I got this weird freelance gig with Crayola working in their education department. And it was like, when you say that, people are like, oh my God, that must be so fun. It was fun, but it showed me that corporations are evil. And like, I was so disposable and I was just being kind of like mined for ideas as like a freaky artist from Brooklyn. And so the whole like system became very clear to me of like where an artist gets sort of thrown into a corporate context and like how problematic and sort of terrible that is. And yet we sort of have this culture like in art communities of like doing a like collab with Nike or like whatever, like trying to get these sort of like weird big corporation deals or something. I don't know. It's very fucked up, and I felt used and abused. But it inspired me to write poems named after every Crayola crayon. I'm not finished yet. There's a lot of colors, but I have about like 30 right now. So I'll read a couple of those if does that sound good? 2 or 3?
Yeah, that sounds great.
Okay.
We're just gonna watch you read though, if that's okay.
Yeah, no, that's fine. There's no visuals for this. But actually I recently decided that I should be collaborating with artists for every color, but we can talk about that later. Okay, the first one is called Blue, the indescribable color of the ocean. I sit in a white chair. The window is open. The clouds are purple soup. Water is clear. I have some right here. When life is too much, God is what I call in. The recognition that something remains indescribable, clear like water, ancient and timeless, like so much air. Everyone is worthless. Some people believe God is blue because that is so rare. Is water really blue? Then God is like water, clear and blue at once. The holy hue, here I am in it. See, lapis pushed through rust-colored blood of slaves in a sari song cave. See, heaven shake out Sassoferato's cloak on the Virgin Mary. See, the same make a blueberry float. In the reflection of flood, a hand mirror shined up the tree's miniskirt. Huh? See, no holiness can swallow itself unless you build it like that. See, it all wants to be blue, indescribable blue, dragging black with it. See, the ocean is a good place to expire. This message is in response to an important servicing matter. My name is Marcus Ray. My name is Stefan Williams. My name is Yulifa Lopez. My name is Rose Graham. This is Destiny Crystal. This is Marissa Moore. I'm Scott Allen. This is Shanique Taylor. My name is Mariah Tanner. My name is Shatavia Beauford. This is Danielle Nelson. This is Akiva Washington with Bank of America. When it's time, tell them I was happy they were getting paid to call me every day and ask for money I never had. Tell them they spoke to a poet. Tell them it's nothing personal. Tell them they did a fine job and that I was just doing mine. Tell them their lifeless bodies will retain no value, will be kept in no vault, will be saved for nothing, spared for nothing, buried with nothing, scantily remembered, but familiar nonetheless. Tell them they are air too, will become blue. Tell them you can't kill a poet, not unless you take away their plane. Tell them what a poet does. Tell them what I do. Okay. That was actually the first one I wrote in the series. This next one is one of the more recent ones that I've written in quarantine, and this color is beautiful. I wish I had the crayons. That would have been so cunt if I just like showed you the crayon. Anyway, beautiful, which is a little Crayola lore, is the most recent color added to the color family, and they kicked out daffodil or something like that. Yeah, sad. So Beautiful is here, and children named it, obviously, Beautiful. Beautiful, the ocean as prima donna. The young tree split by the force of the storm. What must be felt? It pushed too hard, or sacrifice snaps through like that. Jarrett announces that Hadrian had so many statues made into the image of his gay lover, archaeologists thought they were digging up Jesus. Undoubtedly, clouds hold water's sentiments. Exactly, watch. They darken and swell, but hang out like everything's fine. Drawn above the raw, twisted pink wood to witness, for how long? First, a backdrop for the thundering waves, then they pour into the sea. I try to let myself cry, imagining the applause, thunder. Let's just go with a whole blue suite.
Cool.
This next one is sky blue, and I wrote it kind of looking at this George Tooker painting called The Fountain, which is basically like all of these identical looking men, shirtless men in blue jeans, like surrounding a fountain with their hands up in the air. And they're all like blonde and like kind of muscly built. It's a very bizarre painting, and it's very gorgeous, but it looks like some weird cult semen spurting fountain sacrifice situation. So sky blue, a dick is a fountain. Sorry, mom and dad. I like it when men hug, not when they grab each other with one arm and smack each other on the back, grunting something weird like, put her there, bud. I like it when men say with all 3 syllables, I love you. When I say I love you to men, it's 4 syllables and sounds like, can I blow you? If they say yeah, then we hug. We hug in my special way, my arms around the back of their thighs, my hands full or hanging onto their ass, face in their crotch. I like it very much. A lot of men have balls that need CPR. I do that too. I hold their mouth, 30 compressions on their nuts with 2 closed fists, followed by 2 rescue breaths. Of course, I can be softer and lick it too, like an inchworm. Planting little kisses up the shaft. It is so fun. More fun to play than to suck. Flap my tongue in acrobatic ways around the head or use it like a microphone to say something quietly, not to be heard, but to be felt later. If you like giving blowjobs as much as I do, you know teeth, if you have them, can get in the way. I say use them. Finally, I breathe in through my nose and gulp it back, reeling in their cocks with my throat. It turns out my throat is not so deep, average sized, but my will is endless. It's what a dick falls into. My will is the sky, 6 white birds piercing 1 cloud. My will is warm and oblique like fine sheets of mist around a fountain. How's that?
That's great. So I feel like at the last Strangers with Candystore and maybe at Jared's house, you mentioned your adherence to the philosophy of, is it bimbo activism?
Bimbo activism.
Yeah. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about that and maybe also thinking about pleasure in your work.
Yeah, well, that last one is a great example of bimbo activism. I can
That's
see.
right. That's why it came up.
Bimbo activism, I mean, I'm not claiming to be the inventor. We've had a lot of pioneering bimbo activists before us. Anna Nicole Smith comes to mind, Betty Boop. I think in my PowerPoint at Strangers with Candystore, I even had Schnarf in there from Thundercats, if anyone remembers. Schnarf was sort of like the proto Pikachu, in which he, she, they, like pronouns unclear, just said their name over a lot, but was kind of the smartest character. So, and like the most worried too, weirdly. So a bimbo activist is, in my eyes, like someone who is easily written off for either lacking intelligence or being pretty or being sort of inconsequential, but actually they're sort of like making shit happen and kind of working it. Marilyn Monroe and Gentlemen Before Blondes is sort of a great moment for me too. You know, and it's not just about like femininity or blondness. I think those are things that we associate with bimbos. But I think it is just the effect of being underestimated and actually like having your shit together and kind of like knowing how to get what you want and make change and be impactful.
It's interesting because the way that you're talking, it seems like a really appropriate moniker or idea for a lot of reasons in relation to your work, but it seems to tie together like a focus on subject matter, be it aesthetic or in the poems, which might be easily dismissible as circumstantial,
Yeah.
and certain kinds of an aesthetic which might also be seen as too small or too shiny or too pink, right? Like things that are minimized inside of a kind of conception of grand art on one level or another. um, it kind of ties these things together also with like the kind of realization that you're talking about being at the Crayola, inside of Crayola, that like perhaps the ways that art can be instrumentalized is located outside of these um, sensibilities or gestures that are easily dismissed. Like those things are much harder to suck into corporate branding. You know, like you're a freaky artist from Brooklyn moments. So I'm wondering also if you could talk a little bit um, about the um, the my like train of thought is like here now, but I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about those aesthetic moments. um, I know we keep talking about visuals in relationship to your work, but like the your emphasis on, it seems like your emphasis on glitter and slime and thongs seems to be the kind of like important red herring that blowjobs are in the Sky Blue poem. And I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about like focus and subtext in your aesthetic and work.
I mean, like, I think it goes back to kind of the classic Trojan horse idea, like you sort of present this very like grand and digestible sort of gift or like image, and meanwhile you have like an army hiding inside. And I think what I'm drawn to with poetry is that for so long I felt like on the outside of it, like studying poetry, doing my undergrad, like knowing that I loved writing and had like been writing poems long before anyone asked me to. And still like getting this kind of like, well, like your poem isn't, it's not like this enough, like whatever this is. And there's this very kind of watertight canon in academia around writing and especially poetry, and it's really elitist. And obviously like these things are kind of breaking down at this moment, so it's sort of hard to say like right now like what the forecast is like. But when I was an undergrad, like in the early 2000s, it was like, I watched a teacher like throw a book at a girl because she didn't want to read like some stodgy motherfucker who like had no relevance to our life. And so there's this like, I think, venue or sort of a medium for me where I'm like, oh cool, like I can like be a poet, and sort of be like identifying with this very like elite and kind of super cognitive and like intellectual sort of world, but then also like dumb it down, and like make it like fun and sparkly and like kind of gross and like naughty and sexy and slutty and like over the top and like drag and so like that's like I want to get in with all that fun stuff, but I'm kind of like bringing this like thing that people are sort of afraid of, which is poems, and I'm trying to make it not scary and something that speaks to people.
Why is it that like how do you encounter people's fear of poetry?
I don't know. I think more like when I was studying poetry, there was like like I had a lot of fear, and I sensed fear in my classmates of like not getting it. And like even teaching creative writing, you know, when I taught for like 8 years. Hello. And like trying to talk about poetry with young people, they're just like, oh yeah, like I think, and they, to one degree, I feel like they read too deep and are like trying to make these like really smart connections, which just shows you kind of like the conundrum of like contemporary education is like students are too smart or like thinking too hard. Um, but so I sense this sort of resistance in my own study of poetry and creative writing, and then also teaching it, that there's kind of this like, oh yeah, like I'll never get that, or like, oh, that's like not for me, like that's something that's not, doesn't speak to me or to my experience.
Mm.
Do you think that when you merged sort of like performance and poetry, you were able to be more free with it?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really like the corner that I'm making for myself, or like carving out for myself, is like it's all, for me it's like about the performance. It's about what are you looking at, you know, whether it's like me on stage, or you know, projecting things, or this video that I made with my friend, or you know, an altar. Like, to just look at words now, I think, is not enough. And especially if it's a poem, like I have a joke that people who read poetry but don't write it are perverts, because they're like doing this like thing that is so sort of arduous and like not easy, and requires like a lot of thought and kind of contemplation, but then they don't like create it in the same way. And I think most poets, or most people that love poetry, are also poets. So I kind of want to like break that up a bit and sort of show people that you can love poetry and enjoy, and like find ways to enjoy it through these sort of like spectacular little special effects.
Plus also just, you know, the idea of poetics is so much larger than poetry. And like the I wonder if I wonder if you could talk a little bit about both the ethos of fun in your work, but also like in our conversations before this, you were talking about wanting to focus on joy, and specifically a kind of joy which is not solipsistic.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm wondering if like performance, or a shared experience of fun is necessary for that to happen, or if you're interested in other things as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if fun is the right word. Like, obviously, I love to have fun, and I think if I'm not having fun doing my work, then I shouldn't be doing it. But I don't necessarily want other people to, you know, be having the fun that I'm having. You know, I think what's really complicated about happiness and joy is that, one, it's become deeply commodified, and we're sort of like ingrained with this idea that we have to have a certain thing in order to be happy, or to like experience full joy. We have to like own something, or like have some sort of um, feeling of success. And like obviously that's not true. That's like a very recent instrument used to control people. And I think I'm like, I want to sort of unwind that a little bit, and I want to sort of find the sweet spot of like where we're like doing glamour, and we're doing drag, and we're, you know, we're glitter, and we're this, but we're also like kind of confronting some shit, and like thinking about mortality, or thinking about like the fucking world falling apart, or whatever, you know. And those are all things that I try to address in my work. So I don't think it's fun necessarily, but I do think there is something about sharing experiences that is cathartic and that can lead to joy. And humor is a great way for me to sort of address those like more grim topics in my work and do it in a way where I'm adding levity and sort of like buoyancy to a room and not kind of like taking it away. Um, and I was thinking about this question because I got these questions, you know, in advance. Thank you. The word salve came to mind of, you know, like you use a salve when you have some kind of ailment or like a pain. You don't use a salve if you're like doing great, you know, like what, it's just lip balm at that point or something. Um, and so I think I approach everything I make as a salve, as a thing that will ultimately feel better and make like a shitty situation more delightful or more sweet or something.
It's like I feel like that feels that resonates a lot because it treats sweetness as or like it treats sweetness as like a verb almost or something, like, or to sweeten something that would not otherwise be sweet, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to like the way we think of using sweet colloquially as like you know, also a little bit like vapid or cloying, right, or unreal in some way, like unauthentic or untrue. um and like, but also there's like inevitably like a Mary Poppins reference in there or something, you know.
Yeah,
uh, Spoonful of sugar, the hard otherwise truths or something like this.
completely. Yeah. An early influence of mine, Mary Poppins.
Well, if anyone has questions, you should feel free to send them over now. Nancy wanted to ask about whether, I think you may have addressed this a little bit, but um, she was wondering if you spoke the High Angel poems aloud while writing them, with subway sounds as a background, for instance, or kind of environmental sonic cues.
That sounds like a really killer audiobook. Thank you for that idea, Nancy. I haven't read them out loud on the subway, but that's also a good idea. There's a few poems that kind of reference the sounds of the subway.
Hmm.
But yeah, I've never thought of bringing that because it's a very oppressive sound.
Um, I was also wondering, actually, if you could talk a little bit more too about the function of intimacy, especially in the rhetorical address of your work, um,
Yeah.
and how you think about like the closeness of your speech, especially in relation to like the the farther projection of glitter and
Mhm.
you know, glitter and performance and a room and, you know, all of this.
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of people, I was just completely dazzled by Frank O'Hara as like a young gay person and was like, what? It's like, this is a poem. Like, is this about me? Like, I feel like you just, you know, we're having a conversation. You know, there's this like intoxicating kind of, um, you know, candid, gossipy, very sort of shimmery quality to that work. And so it's no wonder that people like constantly revere and reference him. And so I think I learned like that's the kind of work I want to be responsible for. Like I want to include people. I want people to feel like we're in a conversation. You know, he has this famous essay, it's like a page long, about how a poem is like picking up the phone and calling someone, and like, why are we writing poems when we could just like pick up the phone and call someone? Which I think the modern day equivalent is like texting someone. But we have this desire and kind of like need to connect to people. And I think I was like, okay, that's the kind of writing I want to do. So the second person, you, is a really good way to do that. It's like, you are with me in the subway. You know, it's like we can't deny that kind of address. And whether it's about a specific person or if it's sort of like the universal idea of the beloved, or in my high angel poems, it's like kind of to this angel who's I'm sort of imagining is there somewhere. And so that that address has all of these like multifaceted and kind of complicated ways of working inside of a poem, but I knew early on that it included people to do that, which I think is why a lot of my work does do that.
And I was wondering if you could talk to us, unless people have some more questions they want to send, we'll open it up in just a minute. But I kind of wanted to maybe end the more formal part of this, if you could talk us through some of like the iconic Candystore looks that we all know and love.
Yeah, I wish we had like a little slideshow reel.
I know. Like Candystore looks.
A little montage. Well, you know, it's funny because dreams come true. And I met this person, I guess like it's like a year and a half ago. Her name's Jen. And we just met at a party. It was like a friend's birthday party, and we were, you know, mutual acquaintances, but I had never met. And they are a tailor for the stars. They like, you know, Ariana Grande comes to town, well, used to come to town, and Jen like fixes up her sweatpants or whatever for the stage. And when I met them, I was kind of like ready to like pop off in New York. I was like, okay, I've got great friends, I've got connections, like I've performed at some good places. I want to like be a little dilettante of, you know, New York City and just like have these fucking sickening outfits like all over the place and like turn looks and just be insane. And I was like talking to Jen, and I was like, I really just want someone to make me clothes. And she was like, I'll make you clothes. What do you want? Anything. What do you want? Let's talk about it. And like literally that is how it happened. And we like sat down, we were doing the first Strangers with Candystore. Actually, she made me my first look for book fair, which was like a chainmail jockstrap and so, like Selena like bottom floral print pants, but they were actually like assless chaps, and then these like big like Interview with a Vampire Lestat like billowy sleeves. It was absurd what I was wearing, but it was this collaboration again where Jen was like able to do something that she wasn't finding a channel for, and I was like wanting this kind of experience of being very visible and sort of like wacky and draggy and zany. And so yeah, just kind of like transpired in that way. But so there's that look. I don't know, are there any that you're thinking of in particular?
I was just thinking, I mean, when we were talking about it, we kind of Flo and Kelly and I just sort of, we came to identify like a number of different sort of genre or like kind of classifications. The most inspired was like, I forget, Britney Spears Rhinestone Cowboy Candystore. But then there's also like a soft, like kind of like 50s or 60s vampy, like boudoir look. And like sometimes there's kind of like a schoolgirl thing happening, and you know,
Well,
there's like a
yeah, I think like becoming Jen's friend and working with her, you know, having this like, you know, very intense education on how to like make clothes. Like she can do anything. And it was sort of like, how wild can my imagination go? And so us together is like, you know, kerosene on a barbecue or something. Like we get cooking and it's crazy. But I think what she brought to me was like, you can just be like a drag queen like every day. Like you don't have to like, you don't need a stage, like you don't need a gig, like you don't need to be doing a reading, you don't like, there's no real reason why you can't just like go for it and like give something for people to look at. And I've always kind of felt that way, just being the way that I look, like very blonde and faggy and flamboyant or whatever. Like people are always looking at me no matter what. And I was like, well, let's just like give them a fucking shout, you know? And so this like lifestyle drag queen as like a term came to me through Jen, which I like deeply appreciate and try to practice.
Yeah, I mean that feels like a really good place to end what we're calling the formal part of this, and we can let everyone unmute themselves if you want and join in the conversation, which feels like this is, it was already kind of colloquial, but can make space for that. But I feel like I wonder whether there's like a difference for you in like being a lifestyle drag queen and just having to get dressed for things, in the morning. Like for me, it feels like just putting on clothes is already like a less intense version of this, or less like committed. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like,
No, totally. Like
yeah,
there's a distinction between like dressing up and just like getting dressed.
right. But I also
Yeah.
feel like just getting dressed requires a certain kind of effort too, anyway.
Yeah.
I think especially these days, because we spend so much time indoors that like, you have to think sometimes about the top and the bottom, not just like what people are seeing on this part.
Yeah, I think what I meant was like those distinctions like don't really exist when you're
Exactly.
practicing, drag as a lifestyle. Like you are in drag all day long,
Right.
no matter what.
Right.
We were talking about the Precog pom-pom shirt that you have.
Oh yeah, I love
I
that.
was like, and at first I was like, no one's gonna take that shirt, and then you wore it, and I was like, the shirt was meant for you. It was.
I thought about wearing that shirt, but I decided against it because I feel like I wear it to a lot. I've worn it to a lot of like Precog events.
Felt too promotional.
Yeah, so I decided to wear my own face.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Do you want to promote Strangers with Candystore?
Yeah, sure. So I think prior to the pandemic, Strangers with Candystore was sort of like a evolving, like sexy literary cabaret that I hosted. But now that we can't be in person, we're involved in a fundraiser for sex worker outreach project, Glitz, for the Guarls, and I think there's a fourth situation, someone that we're raising money for. Anyway, it's going to air probably at the end of September, maybe the 20th or the 27th. We haven't picked a date yet, but it's kind of keeping in the Strangers with Candystore spirit. There's a lot of queer BIPOC folks sharing work with us and reading stuff and telling stories and talking about stuff. And it's public access themed, like public access TV. So we're calling it Strangers with Candystore Pubic Access.
That's right.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. I'm excited. We're doing a lot of shooting this week and next week. So we'll see what happens.
Fun. Yay.